The Disneyverse is ripe with brave and inspiring princesses who never fail to stay true to who they are. These princesses all come from different backgrounds and they vary in age. We're about to dive into the Disneyverse and reveal our heroes' real ages and origins. You won't believe how much things have changed since the first Disney princess was introduced to the world.
Of all the thingamabobs in this entire world, I never thought I'd get to wear a real... what's it called again?
Snow White. Once upon a time, there was a young and beautiful princess named Snow White. Her story is still one of the most popular fairy tales in the world today. But did you know that it's actually believed that Snow White was a real person who lived in Germany throughout the Middle Ages? The world first heard about the 14-year-old princess when the Grimm brothers wrote and published a collection of tales in 1812. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs became a widely popular tale that was passed down from generation to generation. However, in 1937, Walt Disney animated Snow White's story, which turned her into a worldwide phenomenon. Since the young princess story revolves around wicked witches, kingdoms, and dwarves, many people believe her tale to be fictional. However, there's a lot of evidence disproving this theory. In fact, Snow White might have actually been a living and breathing person who was married when she was only 14 years old. This simply would not fly in today's day and age. But once upon a time, getting married at such a young age was perfectly normal. Cinderella. Much like Snow White, Cinderella is one of the most well-known Disney princesses in the world, and that's probably because she was the second princess to be showcased in the Disney lineup. Cinderella's story comes in many different versions, the most popular one being Charles Perrault's fairy tale, Cinderella, which was published in 1697. This is the story Disney originally drew inspiration from. Perrault's story told a tale of a 19-year-old woman who lived somewhere in France with her widowed father. Unfortunately, he soon remarried with hopes of giving his daughter the family she deserved. But after his sudden passing, Cinderella was forced into servitude and solitude, leaving her to converse with the mice and birds. Her life changed for the better when her fairy godmother paid her a visit and helped her win a prince's heart. Walt Disney Animation Studios turned Cinderella's story into an animated classic in 1950, transforming her into a timeless legend.
And Flora, Fauna, Merriweather.
Sleeping Beauty. Disney fans know and love Aurora, who is known for being the protagonist in Sleeping Beauty. Aurora's story takes place in France. However, there are so many ancient adaptations of her story that it's hard to know for sure where it originated. The young princess was cursed to sleep for 100 years on the eve of her 16th birthday. However, she was later awakened by true love's kiss, which has proven itself to be the strongest weapon in the Disneyverse. The earliest version of Sleeping Beauty was written in the 14th century. However, it was revamped in 1634 and published by Guillaume Baptiste Basile. Famous French writer Charles Perrault spun this fairy tale once more in 1697, giving it the classic storyline we all know and love. Perrault's version was collected and printed by the Brothers Grimm and later animated by Walt Disney in 1959. So it's safe to say that Princess Aurora's story has been lost in translation. Still, some believe that she once roamed the earth under very different circumstances. Ariel. Once upon a time in the Baltic Sea, there was an underground mermaid kingdom, which was ruled by the respectable King Triton. The widowed king had 7 daughters, the youngest and the most fierce one being 16-year-old Ariel. Princess Ariel's fairy tale was written by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, which was first published in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1837. Although Ariel's story has changed tremendously over the years, one thing remains the same. Ariel was willing to do anything to shed her mermaid fins and gain a human soul. Andersen chose to take a very tragic story and give it a happy ending, which totally caught Disney's attention. Walt Disney Animation Studios rewrote Andersen's story and published an animated film with the same name in 1989. Although Snow White and Cinderella might be the most well-known fairy tales in the world, Ariel is by far one of the most beloved Disney princesses ever. Did you guys know that there's a statue of the original Ariel in Copenhagen, Denmark? It's definitely something to check out if you ever travel to that part of the world.
And you'll win first prize at the fair tomorrow. And become a world-famous inventor.
Belle. Princess Belle is an intelligent and brave 17-year-old woman whose tale is literally as old as time. It's believed that her story was written in the 2nd century. In fact, some fanatics believe Beauty and the Beast to be the first fairy tale ever created. However, the first draft of this story was published by Gabrielle Suzanne de Villeneuve in 1740. The world as we know it believes that Belle's origins are rooted in France, much like Cinderella and Aurora's. Gabrielle Suzanne's original work was over 100 pages long and told a very different tale than the one we're familiar with. In 1757, author Marie Le Prince de Beaumont shortened and revamped Gabrielle Suzanne's story, making it more child-friendly. And over 2 centuries later, Disney chose to animate Belle's fairy tale and turn it into the masterpiece it is today. Although we might have met Disney's Belle in 1991, her story has allegedly been around for thousands of years. Pocahontas. Many of us know Pocahontas as the 18-year-old Disney princess who chose to listen to her heart instead of her head. The world first met her in 1995 when the Disney classic Pocahontas was initially released. However, Pocahontas' story is far from being a fairy tale. In fact, Pocahontas was a real-life person who lived in what would become Jamestown, Virginia in 1595. Much like her story depicts, Pocahontas was the daughter of Chief Powhatan, a mighty leader who ruled over more than 30 Algonquin communities. However, it's said that Pocahontas was only 10 years old when her story began, which is a lot younger than we were led to believe. Disney's Pocahontas might have lived her version of a happily ever after, but the real Pocahontas story turned sour very quickly. Still, after so many centuries, her spirited memory is always right around the river bend. Tiana. 19-year-old Tiana from Disney's Princess and the Frog was a hard-working waitress who dreamed of opening her own restaurant in New Orleans. Her story takes place in the 1920s and was written and developed by Ron Clements and John Musker. However, Tiana's story was inspired by 2 different fables, which combined to form the ultimate Disney princess. Tiana made her grand debut in 2009, but her story is a lot older than that. Tiana's backstory was loosely based off of E.D. Baker's The Frog Princess, who originally went by the name Princess Emma. This novel was created in 2002 and quickly gained a following. Princess Tiana was also inspired by the Roman fairy tale, The Frog King. Disney used both these stories as inspiration while creating the first ever African-American Disney princess. Rapunzel. In 2010, Disney released the beloved animated film Tangled, and it quickly became one of the world's most favorite stories. 18-year-old Rapunzel was kidnapped at birth and forced to spend her life in a tower. However, she managed to escape and vanquish her captor, Mother Gothel. There are so many versions of Rapunzel's story that it's hard to keep track of them. Although the Brothers Grimm published Rapunzel's dreary tale in 1812, it's said that Jacobus de Voragine, Archbishop of Genoa, first wrote about Rapunzel's story in 1275 CE. The first version referred to Rapunzel as a saint and not a princess. In fact, her real name is believed to be Saint Barbara. This woman was allegedly imprisoned in a tower by her father for refusing to marry and casting away her Roman beliefs to partake in Christianity. All in all, every version of Rapunzel's story places her in a tower, but little else is known about her origins.
I am Merida, firstborn descendant of Clan Dumbrog.
Merida. Unlike most Disney princesses, Merida's story isn't based on actual events. Instead, it was purely created by writer and director Brenda Chapman, who drew inspiration from her and her daughter's relationship. Disney released Brave in 2012 and totally broke the mold with the New Age royal. Instead of falling in love and marrying a prince at the end of her story, Merida chose to be herself and follow her dreams, not her heart. Brave takes place in 10th century Scotland. However, Merida hails from the kingdom of Dunbrock. The 16-year-old fiery princess fights to be herself despite her parents wanting her to get married. Here's a fun fact for you. There haven't been bears in Scotland since the 10th century, which is probably why Disney chose to base their story in this era. Merida's story is new and inspiring, although it does draw inspiration from Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm many fairy tales. Anna and Elsa. In 2012, Disney released what would become their most successful animated movie ever, Frozen. The story of Princess Elsa and Anna was inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. Anna was modeled after the character Gerda. However, Anna was 18 years old in her film, whereas Gerda was just a young child. In Hans' original story, Gerda wandered aimlessly to find her childhood friend, Kai, who had been infected and enthralled by the Snow Queen. Disney chose to combine Kai and the Snow Queen to create Elsa, who eventually became Anna's 21-year-old sister. Frozen may take place in the magical land that is Arendelle, but it's said that their story truly takes place in Norway. Moana. In 2016, Disney released its animated masterpiece, Moana, which quickly became the talk of the town. Moana is the 16-year-old daughter of the chief of Motunui, and she's expected to take care of her people in her father's stead. Disney created this epic film by combining a series of stories and mythologies.
And his magical fishhook and the heart of Te Fiti were lost.
Originally, Moana was supposed to be about Maui's backstory. However, with so much content to choose from, Disney creators revamped Maui's backstory and integrated it with the fictional character Moana's timeline. Moana's story takes place over 3,000 years ago in the islands of Polynesia. And much like Merida, Moana wasn't forced to get married at the end of her story. Turns out 16 years old is a little too young to tie the knot. A lot has changed since Snow White's story was animated by Disney in 1937, and we're happy to hear it. So which Disney princess is your favorite and why? Let us know in the comment section. And that's a wrap. We hope you liked our Disney Princess video. Before you go, give this video a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to The Things. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.